Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the last session of the day. We're running a little late, but hopefully it'll be of interest and of some substance. We will start with comments from our table, and we will start with, on my far right, Mark Hilseller.
So, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to inform you about the support for Tibet in the Czech Republic, and particularly in the Parliament, which I have the honor to represent here today. It all began in 1989, when we got rid of the communist regime and the Soviet Union occupation troops, when we gained our freedom and began to build our democracy. In 1990, that time President Václav Havel, immediately after his election, invited His Holiness the Dalai Lama to Prague. This visit marked the beginning of a friendship, not only between the two leaders, but also brought our nations closer together, and finally inspired many world statesmen to follow Havel's example. Over the past 30 years, there has been a political consensus in Czech Republic over the universality of human rights, to support them anywhere in the world, including Tibet. Current foreign policy is remaining to the legacy of Václav Havel, and tangible evidence of this can be seen in the meeting between our foreign minister and the current Sikyong Pempa Tseng here in Washington in April this year. There are many similarities and parallels between Czechs and the Tibetan nations, to mention just a few. We have experienced two military occupations and two dictatorships, first Nazi and later communists. During the Second World War, just like Tibetans today, we had a government in exile. During both totalitarian regimes, hundreds of thousands of people emigrated from our countries. And sadly, like the Tibetans, we had self-immolations after the Soviet invasion in 1968. The awareness of the Czech about Tibet is high, and there is almost not a single person who does not know who the Tibetan Dalai Lama is or what the Tibetan flag looks like. Every year, Tibetan flags fly literally over the Czech Republic, all over the Czech Republic, at the state institution, regional offices, town halls, schools, as well as in windows of private houses. Since 2021, the Senate of the Parliament of the Czech Republic has also joined this event. With the support of the President of the Senate and participation of the first Vice President, we have hoisted the flag in a place of honor and on our historic building of the Senate in the center of Prague. This year, the Tibetan flag flew on the building of the Chamber of Deputies as well. These are symbolic but important actions. The Friends of Tibetan group in the Czech Republic Parliament was officially established in 2007. In 2019, two separate groups were established in each chamber. However, they coordinate their activities. Our group are quite large and include even some government ministers, the chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee, and the Speaker of the Chamber of Deputies. In the Senate, 4 vice presidents are members of the group. including the first vice president. In 2003, the Czech Senate hosted a global meeting of Tibet support groups attended by His Holiness the Dalai Lama and President Václav Havel. Back in 2008, a critical resolution on the situation in Tibet was adopted by Czech government, and immediately after the Chamber of Deputies. Both institutions demanded, in connections with brutal repression of Tibetan uprising in Lhasa, in the year of the Olympic Games in Beijing 2008, opening of Tibet to independent journalists, observers, and Red Cross, and asking for the dialogue between the envoys of His Holiness and Chinese government. The Senate adopted two resolutions, one in 1998 and the other in 2021. In solidarity with Tibetans and Uyghurs, Czech Senate called for a diplomatic boycott of 2022 Winter Olympics in Beijing. In January this year, we welcomed Dondup Wanchen to the parliament with his strong campaign to boycott the Winter Olympics. In 2020, we welcomed Sikong Lobsang Sengay to the Senate, who received a statue of Bohemian lion intended as a most respected gift for heads of states. We actively campaigned and issued a statement by senators on the 25th years of enforced disappearance of the 11th Panchayan Llama. This year, the Vice President of the Senate visited on 10th of March Dharamsala. I personally received Tibetan activist and poet Tenzin Tsund in the Senate a month ago. In less than a week's time, the Czech Republic will take over the presidency of the Council of the European Union. In this context, we would like to organize a small conference in the Senate to examine the parallels between the danger posed by Russia to the free world in connection with the war in Ukraine and the risk posed by China to liberal democracies, in particular to Europe. As the invasion of Ukraine and Russian narratives echoes to some extent Chinese military invasion and occupation of Tibet, we support the plan of the Tibetan Parliament in exile to pay a visit to Europe, in particular to the Czech Republic and some Central and Eastern European countries, to exchange views with European citizens and leaders about the importance for Europe to defend its democratic values against authoritarian regimes like Russia or China. We will try to respond to all requests from the Tibetan side from possible activities, and both the Tibetan governments in exile and the Tibetan Parliament can account of our support. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very kindly. And now we'll hear, let me take a look at my list, the Honorable John Tennant Wright Sol, Member of Parliament from El Salvador.
Thank you, sir. This is my first convention, so allow me to make an introduction and speak on the reasons why I am here. In November of 1950, El Salvador, perhaps one of the smallest countries in the Western Hemisphere, was the first to raise the issue or the Sino-Tibetan conflict matter in the United Nations. And it was done by a delegate, a very young delegate. His name was Dr. Alfredo Martinez Moreno. In that moment, he became a close friend of His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, and a friendship that endured for many years. We had the honor of having His Holiness visit El Salvador as well, I think in the year 2004. When I began my political career, Dr. Martinez Moreno took notice, and he made a comment to a friend, a mutual friend, and a member of the Buddhist community in El Salvador, that he believed that he can pass on the torch of maintaining support for the Tibetan cause through me. Maria Elena, this person we had in common, reached out to me, and a meeting resulted in his home. He was kind enough, and at that time, even though his memory was beginning to fade, he recalled that moment quite vividly in November of 1950, and he told me the story. I must confess that as a young politician in a very politicized political climate, I did not initially take the interest that I probably should have. I was preoccupied with other matters, and I never made sense of why even supporting the Tibetan cause was relevant for me as a parliamentarian in a Central American nation that had many, and has many issues ongoing. And this man I'd like to talk about, Dr. Martinez Moreno, passed away in October of 2021, last year. And when that happened, his life and his legacy became immediately apparent. Not only was he a public servant, a former diplomat, he presided the Supreme Court as a magistrate, he was Minister of Foreign Affairs, he was a professor, a profound and passionate intellectual, somebody who stood for democratic values, somebody who stood for the rule of law and democracy, and he fought for it his entire life. He was quite influential also in the framing of our most recent constitution, the constitution in our 50s, which was also the framework for the constitution in 1983. His passing was certainly quite moving, and at that moment I began to understand why the Tibetan cause was so relevant for somebody who held these values so close to his heart and always fought for human rights, for what is right, and for truth. El Salvador now lives a difficult moment where, sadly, our country is shifting towards authoritarian rule. And those principles he fought for are more urgent than ever before. And it is to me now apparent, and that I've been fortunate enough to have been made a part of this effort and this cause, to now realize that El Salvador needs Tibet as much as Tibet needs El Salvador. And it does not matter, or need not matter, the size of the country. It speaks to the common humanity that His Holiness so frequently reminds us of. So to me, it is truly an honor to continue the legacy of Dr. Martinez Moreno. It is also an honor and very fulfilling to see other colleagues as well from El Salvador, Deputy Francisco Lira, and other colleagues from Costa Rica, that's perhaps the strongest democracy in our Central American region, representative from Mexico, and from also Chile, which I'm sure we'll hear about the fantastic and fascinating political transformation it too is going through now. So I'm happy to see this Latin American representation. I'm confident it can grow as well with Gilles Mela's leadership, and thrilled to be here in Washington, a city which I hold dear to my heart, where I lived for 8 years. I went to school here, right across the river at George Washington, and I worked in Virginia as a firefighter in Fairfax County.
Wow.
So service, and as you know, Dr. Martinez Moreno was perhaps one of El Salvador's most emblematic examples, I think is what also brings us together. So in this time of trouble, of much hate and fear in our country and around the world, I have renewed my hope, and I have found also in the Tibetan cause not only a cause worth fighting for, but the principles that would also guide me and other leaders in the region to save democracy and stand up for these values and principles which are so much needed in the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. And now we'll hear from Mr. Vlad Mirosevich Verdugo, Member of Parliament for Chile.
Hello. Bien, my English is not good, and I apologize because I speak in Spanish. Quiero primero agradecer la presencia de varios parlamentarios y parlamentarias chilenas. Está Ana María Gasmuri, Tomás Hirsch, Alejandro Bernales y también Patricio Morales, que es presidente del Partido Liberal. Así que agradezco que tengamos una amplia delegación de Chile y también de América Latina, como decía John. Bueno, mientras muchos países experimentamos tensiones en nuestra democracia y amplios sectores de la sociedad no valoran mucho lo que significa vivir en una democracia, en cambio el pueblo tibetano en el exilio nos da una lección al mundo de lo que realmente significa aspirar y querer vivir en democracia. Siempre me ha llamado la atención de que a pesar del sufrimiento y del abuso, el pueblo tibetano con su actitud no violenta ha sido y sigue siendo una luz de atracción para todos nosotros. Su santidad el Dalai Lama nos da una lección cuando renuncia a su poder político y reduce su rol solamente a un liderazgo espiritual del pueblo tibetano, dando paso a una democracia en el exilio, con elecciones en el exilio que todos tenemos que mirar como un ejemplo. Porque el espíritu democrático del pueblo tibetano es verdaderamente un ejemplo para el mundo. Tiene que ser un ejemplo para el mundo. Vengo de Chile, como decía, un país que está al sur del mundo, que hoy está experimentando muchos cambios, y muchos cambios para mejor. Acabamos de elegir a Gabriel Boric como nuestro presidente, un joven de 36 años, probablemente uno de los presidentes más jóvenes del mundo. Y hay entonces una esperanza de cambio que está en marcha en mi país. Cuando nos juntamos con su santidad el Dalai Lama, ya en 2 ocasiones, él nos entregó hace un par de años atrás un pequeño libro que se llamaba Ética Secular en la Educación. Y hemos experimentado en Chile un proyecto piloto para llevar el currículum de la felicidad a las escuelas más pobres. Y hemos tenido muy buenos resultados para disminuir la violencia. Y también hemos abierto la posibilidad de que los niños y que las niñas se conecten con sus propias emociones. En ese libro, que era el resultado de estudios de la Universidad de Atlanta en neurociencia, su santidad reivindicaba la ética secular, ¿no? Y decía, las religiones no son tan importantes porque lo que importan son los valores humanistas universales. Llevar esto a las escuelas en Chile, en el proyecto piloto que hemos hecho, ha sido un éxito. Encontrarnos en el valor de la compasión como un valor universal, independiente de las creencias que cada uno tenga, ¿no? Sobre todo en un Estado laico como Chile. Ahora, nuestro compromiso es llevar ese programa, y lo hemos hablado con algunos miembros de la delegación de Chile, llevar este programa del currículum de la felicidad al resto de las escuelas en el resto del país. Ya no solo como una experiencia piloto pequeña, sino que ampliarlo al resto de Chile. Y quiero agradecer la generosidad que ha tenido el gobierno tibetano en el exilio, y aprovecho aquí al Sikyom de darle las gracias por la generosidad de compartir esta sabiduría milenaria con el resto del mundo y por colaborar permanentemente con Chile. Quiero aprovechar de agradecer a Saguán Funso, que hoy día está retirado de sus funciones diplomáticas, pero que fue una gran colaboración con lo que nosotros hemos hecho en Chile y que hoy día lo está haciendo Jimmy con nosotros también, como su reemplazo en América Latina. Bueno, para ir terminando, luego de que la mayoría del pueblo tibetano decidiera el camino medio, ese tiene que ser el camino. Una vez que se renunció a la idea de independencia, entonces las conversaciones y las negociaciones con las autoridades chinas tienen que retomarse. Y desde los distintos países, desde el multilateralismo, tenemos que ayudar a hacer entender que el camino medio, que la autonomía no es una amenaza, sino que es el camino pacífico y acordado. En el pasado en Chile sufrimos de una dictadura sangrienta que nos quitó 17 años de libertades. Esa violencia no la queremos para ningún pueblo del mundo. Entonces vaya nuestra solidaridad con el pueblo tibetano y por el sufrimiento que están viviendo hoy día. La cultura tibetana debe mantenerse viva, su lenguaje, su arte, su sabiduría ancestral, su religión, y por eso entonces desde Chile, desde este pequeño país del mundo, al sur del mundo, queremos entregar nuestra solidaridad con el pueblo tibetano y que vamos a seguir acompañándoles en este proceso hacia la autonomía. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias, Val. And next we have, let me take a look, l'honorable Jacqueline Eustache-Brignot, sénatrice de France, présidente de la France Senate Tibet Support Group. How was that? Not too bad?
C'est parfait.
Merci.
C'est parfait. Et moi aussi, je vais parler en français. Je vais parler en français parce que, comme mon ami, mon anglais n'est pas suffisamment fluent pour parler en anglais. Donc, moi aussi, c'est ma première participation à cette grande réunion mondiale autour du Tibet et de nos amis tibétains. Et je suis évidemment particulièrement émue et fière d'être là et de représenter le groupe, effectivement, d'information sur le Tibet qui existe au Sénat depuis une vingtaine d'années. Nous sommes 20 sénateurs à défendre cette cause et moi, je préside effectivement depuis 3 ans ce groupe. Pourquoi je le préside? Parce que je défends cette cause tibétaine depuis une vingtaine d'années. Alors 20 sénateurs de tout horizon politique parce que la cause du Tibet dépasse tous les problèmes et les débats politiques internes que nous avons en France. Donc c'est la richesse de ce groupe et de cette défense de cette culture tibétaine. Alors en 1989, Sa Sainteté avait reçu le prix Nobel de la paix en raison de son engagement en faveur de la voie de la non-violence, celui qui prône l'amour, celui qui prône la paix, celui qui prône la tolérance. Comment ne pouvons-nous pas défendre cette belle cause et cette belle culture? Alors c'est cet engagement-là de la non-violence, puis la défense de l'environnement, l'appel à regarder l'autre, à l'appel à être tolérant, à la responsabilité universelle, au devoir que nous avons chacun sur les générations futures, qui explique en partie que cette cause attire la sympathie de l'opinion publique internationale et de l'opinion française en particulier. Alors pourquoi je dis ça? Parce que, effectivement, la voie diplomatique, la voie politique est importante, mais je crois que nous, sénateurs, nous élus, nous engagés politiquement, nous devons transmettre ce combat à toutes les populations qui nous entourent. Et en fait, la chance que nous avons dans notre cause, c'est que cet appel à la non-violence, cet appel à la tolérance, elle est très facile à transmettre. C'est aussi pour ça que énormément de citoyens à travers le monde soutiennent la cause du Tibet. Alors nous avons un double problème. Là, il est plus politique, c'est-à-dire que les relations avec la Chine, à mon sens, ne devraient pas être aussi souples et aussi ouvertes et aussi tolérantes, parce qu'on voit très bien qu'en tout cas, nous, l'Europe de l'Ouest, nous sommes souvent coincés, les hommes politiques sont souvent coincés, entre le fait de ne pas heurter les Chinois et le fait de défendre la cause tibétaine. Eh bien moi, je dis, tant pis, heurtons les Chinois, mais défendons la cause tibétaine. Je pense qu'on peut, voilà, je pense que c'est important de faire les deux. Alors, nous prenons, nous, notre responsabilité de contribuer à ce capital de sympathie envers les actions envers le Tibet, pour une raison aussi importante, c'est que la France, c'est le pays des droits de l'homme, et quand un pays porte les droits de l'homme en son cœur, il doit aussi les porter pour défendre la cause tibétaine. Et ça, je le dis parce que je pense que beaucoup de gens n'imaginent pas la souffrance que vivent les Tibétains dans leur pays, et puis ceux qui sont en exil aussi, parce qu'ils ont dû partir pour pouvoir être libres et pour pouvoir porter en eux ce qui les a construits. Alors, chers amis, vous savez que le Tibet, en tout cas, aura toujours à ses côtés, les Tibétains aura toujours à ses côtés le groupe international du Sénat pour défendre la liberté de l'identité tibétaine, pour que l'information des membres soit également faite et qu'elle soit soucieuse de dénoncer et de présenter les enjeux très très importants pour le Tibet. Alors, comme notre collègue l'a fait tout à l'heure, nous avons, en tout cas moi je porte en moi le fait qu'il faut absolument porter à travers la France la place que le Tibet peut prendre. Donc nous avons reçu au Sénat le Dalai Lama en 2016, le précédent Sikyong aussi, et j'espère que le nouveau Sikyong viendra au Sénat, il sera accueilli les bras ouverts. Nous recevons aussi un certain nombre d'associations comme ICT, nous avons reçu Michael aussi qui est au fond de la salle, nous l'avons reçu récemment et nous avons échangé et en tout cas moi il m'a beaucoup appris sur l'histoire du Tibet et l'origine du Tibet, je le remercie encore. Et puis nous recevons régulièrement des témoignages de Tibétains qui passent en Europe et à chaque fois la porte du Sénat est ouverte puisque ça nous permet aussi nous de transmettre un certain nombre d'informations et de ce qui se passe au Tibet. Et à titre personnel, évidemment, je participe à tous les événements qui peuvent avoir lieu en France, l'Ossar, j'y vais régulièrement, les festivals autour de l'Himalaya, et nous allons souhaiter en juillet prochain l'anniversaire du Dalai Lama au Sénat, comme nous le faisons chaque année, n'est-ce pas, chers collègues, parce que c'est important de le faire avec nos collègues de l'Assemblée. Alors pourquoi je dis ça, c'est que quand on transmet et quand on partage, on permet de donner à la cause tibétaine une place de plus en plus importante. En France, il y a encore 15-20 ans, les Français n'étaient pas attachés en tout cas à cette cause. Je pense qu'il y a un élément important que vous le sachiez, c'est les Jeux Olympiques de Pékin en 2008, qui ont été pour moi les Jeux de la honte, c'est comme ça qu'on les a surnommés. Il a réveillé la conscience des Français autour de la cause tibétaine, vraiment. Nous avons été très nombreux à manifester contre ces Jeux. Moi-même, j'ai manifesté contre l'ambassade de Chine et je pense que les Français ont compris qu'il y avait un peuple qui souffrait et qu'il y avait un peuple qui était massacré. Donc je pense qu'il y a quelque chose d'extrêmement important, c'est de vous battre et nous vous aidons à le faire pour conserver évidemment votre langue, pour conserver vos traditions, pour conserver cette culture qui vous est propre, qui est si chère et qui est si belle et avec laquelle nous avons parfois des points communs. Donc je pense que ça c'est extrêmement important de le faire. Nous avons aujourd'hui, comme dans d'autres pays européens, de plus en plus de mairies qui mettent le drapeau au mois de mars sur le fronton de la mairie. Moi, j'ai été une des premières à le faire quand j'étais maire, et beaucoup de collègues le font. Donc ça veut dire que cette cause tibétaine, elle se distille, elle se diffuse à travers les consciences, à travers le monde, et il ne faut pas la lâcher. Donc voilà, pour conclure, je dirais que nous portons en nous cette tristesse, ce drame qui se vit au Tibet, mais il ne faut jamais se résigner, on n'est jamais seul. Je pense que vous avez ici, d'ailleurs, cette conférence aujourd'hui le montre, à travers le monde, des pays très différents les uns des autres, des pays avec des cultures très différentes, défendent cette cause tibétaine, et je pense que vous avez cette chance. Alors, pour conclure, je dirais que nous devons nous battre pour la liberté au Tibet, parce que ce n'est pas uniquement pour la liberté au Tibet que nous nous battons à vos côtés. Je pense que c'est pour la liberté à travers le monde. N'oublions jamais que la liberté est fragile. Vous l'avez perdue il y a longtemps. Nous pouvons la perdre. Les événements en Ukraine montrent que une guerre peut à tout moment être déclenchée. Donc la liberté pour le Tibet, nous nous battons pour elle parce que nous nous battons pour la liberté à travers le monde. Merci à vous tous. Merci.
Merci pour votre mot inspirationnel. Ladies and gentlemen, we now have a young lady who I've seen growing up. I have known her for the last 25, 30 years as a wonderful member of the Canadian Tibetan community who has blossomed into a very capable, competent, smart, and capable person. My friend, member of the provincial legislature, Butila Karpoche.
Thank you very much, Senator. Thank you. So my name is Butila Karpoche, and as you can tell, and has just been shared by the Senator, I am Tibetan. And so I am in a unique position, and I would say have a unique responsibility as a Tibetan elected representative in Canada. My family migrated to Canada in the early 2000s, and like many young Tibetans in Canada, I joined the Tibetan freedom movement and became a Tibet activist. And in my work as a Tibet activist, particularly on campus as a university student, I realized very quickly that in order to gain solidarity from others, we have to lend solidarity. And so in that path, I worked on a number of issues ranging from housing, workers' rights, public health care, and was able to build a community of activists and people in our city, in Toronto, particularly in my riding of Parkdale High Park, a network of people who understood the Tibetan people, the Tibetan struggle, and lend their solidarity to us in our Tibetan freedom movement. And through that work, I got involved in mainstream Canadian politics. And as the years passed and I got more and more involved, there came an opportunity to seek public office. And I had, of course, many different motivations to run for public office. Certainly, an important one was that who better than a Tibetan person to talk about the Tibetan community, to talk about the Tibetan freedom struggle, and to talk about Tibet as a whole, and head in the direction that we want to see Ontario, Canada move towards. And that is why I ran for public office, and I was blessed with the confidence of my constituents to be elected. And right away, I knew that I had to use the platform that was afforded to me to talk about Tibet. And I wanted to share some of the highlights of the work that was done in the Ontario Parliament during my first term. By the way, I just got re-elected a few weeks ago, so I'll be starting my second term soon. So in my first term, for example, one of the first things I did was to make a statement on International Human Rights Day and also the day that His Holiness won the Nobel Peace Prize. And you can imagine when I speak in the House, I'm wearing my Tibetan chuba. And you know, for an elected representative to be dressed in my Tibetan traditional wear in itself is very symbolic. We have an annual Tibet Day at the Ontario Parliament, a day when we invite the leadership of Tibet community organizations and the larger community to meet with the parliamentarians from all political parties. And so it is a space and a place to exchange ideas and to build relationships. We've launched the Ontario Parliamentary Friends of Tibet summer program, which is modeled after the one in Ottawa. And through that program, we have trained the next generation of young Tibetans into policy, into governance work, and to get a behind-the-scenes look and experience into Canadian politics, specifically in Ontario politics. And I'm very excited that, you know, this program has helped many students. Particularly, we've seen participants of our program graduate to go on and get involved. It is a non-partisan program, so we have all parties involved. And some students have gone on to work for other parties, which is good. This is the aim of the program, is we want to see Tibetan representation in all political parties to be able to build that support. Made another statement on the colonial boarding school, secured government funding for Tibetan community organizations who are the frontline people on the ground who do the daily work of preserving Tibetan language and culture. So it's really important that these organizations get this government support. And, for example, when the Office of Tibet Representative visited the Ontario Parliament, we were able to host meetings in an official capacity, things that hadn't been done before I got to the House. And finally, the last thing I wanted to share was that I brought forward a piece of legislation to recognize July of each year as Tibetan Heritage Month in Ontario. And when I tabled that bill, I wasn't quite sure how long it would take for me to get the bill, go through the legislative process and become law. But we did a lot of, I think, very strategic planning in terms of building that support. And within 18 months, we were able to get the bill passed. And it is now officially every year making Ontario the first jurisdiction in the world to recognize July as Tibetan Heritage Month. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about why I tabled the bill to recognize a specific month as Tibetan Heritage Month. I mean, July, of course, holds a very significant date for Tibetans because July 6th is the birthday of His Holiness. His Holiness is an honorary Canadian citizen, but also, and I think this is what will tie into some of the reasons why we're here and the work that we're doing, is that heritage is about people. And this is part of the speech that I gave when we were debating the bill in the House. It's the way we identify ourselves, and Tibetans are a distinct people. We have our own language, script, history, customs. And in Ontario, the Tibetan community is, we are into our third generation of Tibetans in exile. I'm first generation immigrant in Canada. And I go on to talk about my grandmother and her life story. And I reminded everybody that heritage is also about telling stories. And recognizing Heritage Month is about seeing and celebrating each other's stories. And it's a reminder of our strength as Canadians. Telling our stories helps understand and take pride in where we come from and where we want to go. Because it's not just about the past, but it's also about our shared desire for a future that we can determine for ourselves. And Tibetans, we know we are up against a very well-oiled propaganda machine of the Chinese government who want to tell our stories. And so through July as Tibetan Heritage Month, we are serving a reminder, the need for accurate telling of stories. And finally, the Tibetan community in Canada, like many different immigrant communities, are part of the Canadian mosaic. And we want to be a part of every aspect of Canadian life, including in politics. And so it's very, I'm excited to be here because these are some of the things that we've done in my first term. I'm starting my second term now. I'm looking forward to, as I've heard from many of you, in terms of what is going on in legislatures and parliaments across the world, so we can learn from each other, we can duplicate efforts that have worked, and be able to build that broad support and solidarity across the world. Thank you very much.
In thanking Butila, I want to tell you that both times, both her two elections, she actually won two of the largest majorities ever in the parliament. She is not only accepted, she is strongly and well accepted in her community in Toronto. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we're now going to turn to the videos. Who's in charge of the video here? And I am going to remind the videos, I did not do it with the folks at the table, but please try to keep your remarks to about 3 minutes. And the speakers, we start with the Honorable Mikulas Peksa, MEP and President of the Interest Group. Nicolas.
Dear Parliamentarians, it's an honor to be able to deliver this short video message in the 8th World Parliamentarians Convention on Tibet here in Washington, D.C. Unfortunately, I was not able to attend in person due to the ongoing plenary in the European Parliament. However, I will make it my priority as the chairperson of the Tibet Interest Group in the European Parliament to attend the next convention. Additionally, I would like to extend my thanks to the Office of Tibet in Brussels, who facilitated delivery of this message. In the Tibet Interest Group in the European Parliament, we are aware of the worsening human rights situation in Tibet. We will continue to raise the issue of human rights in Tibet at every possible platform, and we will use every tool we have at our disposal in the European Parliament to advocate for Tibet. Dear Tibetans, dear colleagues, please rest assured we are in this together and can count on our continued support. Thank you and enjoy the rest of the convention.
And now we'll hear from the Honorable Dr. Samuel Kogolati, MEP, Vice Chair of the Belgian Federal Parliament, Co-Chair on Foreign Affairs and IPAC.
Hello, dear friends of Tibet, dear distinguished colleagues. It's a great honor to address this video message to you in order to support the 8th World Parliamentarians Convention on Tibet, which is a meeting of like-minded parliamentarians that take place every few years in different capitals of the world to assess, discuss, and advise new strategies in order to support Tibetans' struggle for freedom and for non-violence. Despite receiving the kind invitation by the representative of His Holiness the Dalai Lama here in Brussels, I am very, very sorry I cannot attend this meeting in DC because of very busy weeks ahead in Parliament, also notably due to the ongoing war in Ukraine. However, being a very close friend of Tibet, I really can and want to ensure you that I will do everything possible to attend the next meeting of the World Parliamentarians Convention on Tibet, and I remain also very well aware of the grave and very concerning human rights situation in Tibet, which I really try to address in every possible forum. Again, please keep in touch and really looking forward to seeing you very soon for Tibet.
Our next speaker really is a dear friend and a gentleman that I've worked with on the Tibetan file for 20, 30 years probably. My friend, the Honorable Thomas Mann, former MEP and a longtime president of the Tibet Group. Thomas?
Dear Tibetans and supporters of the Tibetan path, my warm greetings from the European Union to you who are participating in a significant Congress. I would have been very happy to be present in Washington to express our solidarity. Unfortunately, I have already agreed to be keynote speaker at 2 conferences here in Germany. For 10 years, I was the president of the Tibet Intergroup in the European Parliament. We met regularly and exchanged views with experts in journalism, science, and politics. We have experienced the insider knowledge of former Tibetan refugees, nuns and monks, and representatives of human rights organizations. We have been able to convince the overwhelming majority of the European Parliament to support the democratization process of the Tibetans. I have personally met some of your Kalan Tripas. Our demonstrations in front of the political institutions on the European level, as well as in the European member states, our conferences, for example, on the middle way approach, on education camps in China, on environmental policy at the third pole, have had a huge impact. Several times we have visited Dharamsala as an official delegation to meet His Holiness the Dalai Lama and the Tibetan government in exile. The European Parliament's annual China report contains important chapters on Tibet. I wish all of us that the topic of Tibet, its diversity of culture, language and religion will always be on the international agenda. I wish your conference an extraordinary success. May it inspire us all. Your Thomas Mann.
Thank you, Thomas. We now have comments by Carl Puigdemont, MEP and former President of Catalonia.
Dear colleagues and friends, thank you very much for inviting me to address this short video message to the 8th International Parliamentarian Convention on Tibet held in Washington, D.C. My intention will have been to join you here in Washington, D.C., but unfortunately my freedom of movement could not be granted due to political pressures from Spain. Let me say once again our support to the middle way established a long time ago by the Dalai Lama as the non-violent political approach to a solution for Tibet. Once again, I'm asking the Chinese government to sit down around a negotiation table with the Dalai Lama and the Central Tibetan administration. I'm against Tibetan language discrimination and marginalization, especially regarding recent Beijing government measures to establish Chinese language as the only language of education at all school levels. So we ask for freedom of religion and opinion. Chinese authorities kidnapped a 6-year-old Tibetan boy, the Panchayan Llama, just days after the Dalai Lama recognized him as the reincarnated Lama. It is already 27 years since that horrific crime did happen, but we are still waiting for the Chinese government answer to this simple question: where is the Panchayan Llama? Freedom of all Tibetan political prisoners, free return of all Tibetan exiles, tens of thousands forced to live abroad in diaspora. Thank you very much.
And the next member to address us is the Honorable Lawrence Vince, MEP.
Dear participants to the 8th World Parliamentarians Convention, allow me to express my full support from the European Parliament to the 8th Tibetan Convention, reuniting like-minded parliamentarians in different capitals of the world and discussing strategies in support of the Tibetan people's non-violent struggle for freedom. I am sorry that despite the very kind invitation of the Office of Tibet in Brussels, I could not be present with you in person. It is not easy to have regular information from Tibet. However, many of us in the European Parliament are aware of the worsening human rights situation there, not least because of the persisting advocacy work carried out by the Tibet office. The recent war of aggression against Ukraine has shown us that there can be a strong and united response from the international community in face of acts of violence against a nation. It has also reminded us that the eyes of the global public can essentially only focus on one international conflict at a time, and that only on major aspects. Older and more persisting conflicts tend to be forgotten. But I promise you, Tibetans are not forgotten. A member of a national minority myself, I am Hungarian from Romania, I understand the everyday tragedy happening in Tibet, due to China's policy of sinicization, aiming to eradicate Tibet's unique identity and culture. A close friend of Tibet, I promise that I will continue to support in the European Parliament the Tibetans' non-violent struggle to live in freedom. I wish you a successful convention.
Thank you again, and now we'll hear remarks by the Honorable Shimomura Hakugun, Chairman of the Japanese Parliamentary Group for Tibet.
日本チベット国会議員連盟会長の下村博文です。第8回世界チベット議会が開催されておりますことを心からお喜び申し上げます。まずはじめに現在、日本では参議院選挙が行われております。そのことで参加できないことを心からお詫び申し上げたいと思います。さて、ロシアにおけるウクライナ侵略は力による一方的な現状変更を認めないとの国際秩序の根幹を揺るがすものであり、欧州だけでなく日本においても多大なる影響を及ぼす大きな問題となっております。北朝鮮は極めて高い頻度で弾道ミサイルの発射を繰り返しており、また中国は我が国周辺の海、空における活動を拡大し、軍事活動が活発化し、懸念すべき状況にあります。日本チベット国会議員連盟は2016年11月、自由民主主義、基本的人権、法の支配といった基本的価値観を共有し、チベットの現状を正しく理解し、国際社会に向け積極的に平和主義を貫くことを趣旨として、超党派の国会議員として結成されました。現在102名の議員が加盟しており、議員連盟の規模としては世界最大規模であるというふうに思います。近年、国際社会からチベットはじめ新疆ウイグル、南モンゴル、香港などにおける新疆の自由への侵略や強制収監をはじめとする深刻な人権侵害への懸念が示されております。人権問題は人権が普遍的価値を有し、国際社会の正当な関心事項であることから、一国の内政問題にとどまるものではありません。この事態に対し、一方的に民主主義を否定されるなど、弾圧を受けていくと訴える人々からは、国際支援を求める多くの声が上がっており、日米首脳会談、G7 などにおいても人権侵害への深刻な懸念が共有されているところであります。このような状況において、日本チベット国会議員連盟は、今年2月、人権侵害が懸念される他の議連と一緒になって、衆議院において国会決議を行いました。中国に対し、力による現状の変更を国際社会に対する脅威とし、国際社会が納得する形での説明責任を果たすよう強く求めるとともに、日本政府に対し、この深刻な人権侵害の全容を把握するため、事実関係に関する情報収集を行い、国際社会と連携して監視し、救済するための包括的な施策の実態を求めました。日本チベット国会議員連盟としては、本日ご参集の世界チベット議会メンバーと連携し、中国との対話の窓口を開いていけるよう尽力をしてまいります。結びに第8回チベット議会の成功を心よりお祈り申し上げ、メッセージとさせていただきます。ありがとうございました。
Thank you very much. And next we will hear from the Honourable Ferenc Glencer, Member of Parliament for Hungary.
Dear delegate, dear friend, Tashi Delek, it's an honor to address the 8th World Parliamentarians Convention of Tibet. I do regret not being able to attend the convention in person. Some of you know how close the issue is to my heart, as I have personally witnessed the plight of Tibetan refugees while working in Dharamsala. Let me express my deepest gratitude to Mr. Prime Minister Panchayan for the hard work he is doing for the Tibetan community and for the diaspora. Though today I can only send you my warmest greetings from Budapest, Hungary, I do hope that I will have the chance to greet you all in person in the near future. Last October, I briefed the Tibet Bureau in Geneva about the political situation in Hungary. I emphasized that in Hungary, political freedom is declining and that Beijing is getting a hold on the Hungarian government using its debt trap diplomacy. By loaning billions of euros to the government, the CCP has a say in the Hungarian political narrative. Due to that influence, our government signed a declaration of intent with Huawei in regard of building a 5G network in the country. Huawei is a company that was working on the face recognition software the Chinese Communist Party is using against ethnic minorities in China. The government of Hungary is intending to set up a campus for the Chinese University of Fudan. Fudan is a well-known and respected institute, however its loyalty does not lie with science. According to its preamble, the university is loyal to the leadership of the Chinese Communist Party, follows and executes the party's educational policies, and accepts the leading role of Marxism. Beside Huawei and Fudan, I have to mention the construction of the Budapest-Belgrade railways. Its cost is estimated to be $2.5 billion, of which 85% is covered by the Chinese loan of Exim Bank and is constructed by Chinese companies. Dark clouds gather over Hungary, but after the rain comes sun, and its first beams are already visible. Momentum that is dedicated to articulate the importance of human rights just got into the National Assembly. We will not be silenced. We will stand up for the cause of Tibet in a parliamentary level. The occupation of Tibet by an authoritarian regime became extremely pressing for those living in Central Europe due to the war in Ukraine. History must not repeat itself. In politics, ideas and daily political reality do not always align. I'm well aware of that. However, we shall not forget where our red lines are. We should stand up when justice calls. Violating basic human rights is one of these issues. I'm honored that from now on I can contribute to this work from the Hungarian Parliament. The Parliamentary Convention of Tibet is an important network, and through its regular meetings it provides an essential tool to make sure that the world is kept up to date on the cause of Tibet and on the wrongdoings of the Chinese authorities. Your work is essential in highlighting all the crimes against Tibetans and in showing the truth. I trust you will carry on the good work you are doing. You can count on me to do the same. Thank you. Free Tibet.
Our next speaker is also an old friend on the Tibetan file, the Honorable Matteo Bianchi, a member of Parliament of Italy, and the Italian Parliamentary group of Tibet. Matteo, the next time I'm in Italy, I'll buy dinner. Please give us your remarks.
Good morning to all present at this important conference. I am Matteo Bianchi of Lega Party, member of the Chamber of Deputies in the Italian Parliament. I'm very honored to be able to be here at this meeting, which brings together many politicians from all over the world who share a commitment to the Tibetan cause and to the values it represents. Culturally and politically, I have always paid particular attention to the so-called minorities, defending culture and values and the peoples who, due to historical events, are suffering a brutal repression of their traditions, their religion, their culture, has been part of my priority commitment for many years. During my time as a mayor, I always held the Tibetan flag of my office to clearly state to all those I received what my position was towards this important cause. In 2019, I had the opportunity to be present in Dharamsala on the anniversary of the Lhasa uprising. On that occasion, I was able to admire the perfect organization of all the events. Obviously, I am part of the Italian and Tibetan parliamentary intergroup, and I have taken part in many initiatives that the group has put in place. There are many things to do because in the meantime, new and worrying events make us understand that the People's Republic of China does not intend to give up on anything regarding the political management of Tibet. There are many aspects that worry about the current situation in Tibet, from the systematic destruction of important symbols of Buddhist culture and religion, as well as the forced deportation of monks from Greek monasteries. Equally serious are the attacks on the environment in Tibet, with intensive construction of mines and dam projects. Still dramatic in the continuous attack on the traditional language and culture of Tibet. Right now, I'm taking steps to have a bipartisan resolution approved in the Italian Parliament on these issues. I take this opportunity to extend to all of you my warmest greetings and best wishes for a good job in the hope of meeting us in the next occasion, also with some concrete results for our common value.
Our next remarks come from the Honourable Warren Hench, member of the Australian Parliament and co-chair of Australia All-Party Parliamentary on Tibet.
G'day, I'm Warren Hench, co-chair of the Australian All-Party Parliamentary Group for Tibet. I'm sorry I can't be with you today. We recently had an election here in Australia, and at this time I'm required in my electorate. I've had the privilege of serving as a co-chair in the parliamentary group for Tibet for many years now, and a very, very strong supporter of the Tibetan people and, of course, their plight to retain not only their identity but also their homelands. And I will be very much determined to continue to offer that support. I've had the privilege of meeting personally His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and I had the opportunity of travelling to Ottawa a few years ago on a similar event. I've shared a meal with His Holiness, and I have to say he's also shared with me on several occasions his very interesting sense of humour. I really am disappointed that I can't be there to share this moment with you, and I'd like to again express my sincere apologies for not being there today. I sincerely wish all who are attending the World Parliamentary Convention on Tibet every success, and let's keep pushing the cause. There has to be change, and there has to be justice and equity for the Tibetan people. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hench, either in Canada, I'd love to see you again, or in the next parliamentary conference, I hope to meet once again. The next video remarks are from Edward John Markey, U.S. Senator.
Hello, I'm Senator Ed Markey from Massachusetts, the chairman of the Senate East Asia Subcommittee. I'm proud to join you at the 8th World Parliamentarian Convention on Tibet. I want to express support for Tibetans inside and outside of Tibet, including the Tibetan American community that makes Massachusetts its home. I would also like to acknowledge and to validate Tibet's distinct political, ethnic, cultural, and religious identity. That is just so important to recognize. And myself, I was honored to meet with His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, both when I accompanied Nancy Pelosi to India in 2008 and when I welcomed His Holiness to Medford, Massachusetts in 2003. That was a special day that I will always treasure. And I'm proud to join you in standing for the right of Tibetans to choose their own religious leaders. The successor to His Holiness the Dalai Lama must be chosen by the Tibetan people themselves and the Tibetan people alone. This is a principle which must remain sacrosanct. We must do more to protect Tibetan rights, including working together with partners around the world to ensure that the arbitrary imprisonment, ideological re-education, and forced assimilation in Tibetan areas by the government of China end. Cease. Stop. It is wrong. I was proud to join my Senate colleagues in a letter this past December to the United States Special Coordinator for Tibetan Issues, voicing our support for Tibetan autonomy. It is critical that the United States stand for the autonomy of Tibet. Together, we call for supporting religious freedom for the Tibetan people, deepening engagement with the Central Tibetan administration in exile, advocating for the release of Tibetan political prisoners, and working to provide for meaningful autonomy for Tibetans. This has to be a principle which the United States stands for. It's a bipartisan issue in the United States. In 2020, the United States Congress passed the Tibetan Policy and Support Act. This legislation, which I supported, reaffirmed the support of the United States Congress for Tibet and mandated that the United States State Department work with other governments to promote genuine dialogue between Tibetan leaders and the government of China. We have to work not just here in the United States, but with partners across the planet to achieve that goal. And as chairman of the East Asia and Pacific Subcommittee, it is my pleasure to have this opportunity to support the people of Tibet and His Holiness the Dalai Lama. This remains an important human rights and freedom of religion issue. We remain united in our support for Tibetans. I wish you a successful convention.
Very well said. Folks, lastly, I have a message from 15 European parliamentarians. I will read their names. Mikulas Peksa, Marketa Gregorova, Patrick Breyer, Marcel Kolaja, Hannes Heidi, Salima Yembu, Carlos Puigdemont y Casamajo, Anthony Comín y Oliveres, Clara Posanti Obiols, Michaela Sojdrova, Austra Maldekine, Francisco Guerrero, Tomas Zechovsky, Heidi Hatula, Lucia Duris Nikolsonova, and the message will be read by my dear sister, Tibetan sister.
Honorable parliamentarians, we, members of the European Parliament from the Tibet Interest Group, are extending our gratitude for being heard here at the 8th World Parliamentarians Convention on Tibet. Although unfortunately not being able to be here in person, let it be known that our support for Tibet is ever present, no matter the distance. Even though the global COVID-19 pandemic made our advocacy work more difficult, we did not cease our activities and maintained an open channel of communication between members of the European Parliament and representatives of Tibet. This allowed us to organize several high-level meetings on the topics of reciprocal access to Tibet for journalists, personal freedom and freedom of religion in Tibet, and the concerns over the Beijing 2022 Olympics. Now, when meeting in person and traveling is easier, we are committed to further strengthen our Tibet advocacy efforts, facilitate interparliamentary dialogue and cooperation, and celebrate Tibetan culture. We pledge that we will continue to promote the rich cultural heritage of Tibet, coordinate with the Central Tibetan Administration on policy issues, and build networks across the world to reach a common goal: end religious and cultural repression in Tibet, stop unlawful arrests, and do what we can to help reestablish the Sino-Tibetan dialogue. It is only through dialogue that we can find a peaceful and negotiated solution to the dire situation in Tibet. Remember the middle way approach proposed by His Holiness the Dalai Lama, which has the potential to help us reach a situation where Tibetans finally manage their own cultural, religious, educational, and environmental affairs. It is our role as parliamentarians to foster dialogue on the national and international levels and use our expertise and networks to help Tibetans bring about positive change in the country. Rest assured that we will all keep working towards this goal by using all the tools we have in the European Parliament. Dear colleagues, thank you all for being here today, and let us work together on a brighter future for Tibet. Thank you, as a Tibetan.
If I read my instructions correctly, our responsibilities at the head table are now finished, and I don't know if there's anything else, or we're going out to dinner. Who's in charge here?
Thank you to the chair and all the distinguished panelists on the last formal session on sharing experiences, collaboration, networking, and action plans of like-minded countries. So this is the end of the formal first day session. Cocktail hours are available from now till 7 o'clock, and then dinner will be served at 7 p.m. So thank you all, and this brings to the end the first day of the formal session. Thank you.